Hi there, I'm Jan from Mogenius, and today I want to show you how to set up your own Mogenius account by connecting it to a Kubernetes cluster and then deploying your first service on that cluster. So to dive right into it, we already created our own account using the Mogenius free tier. And the first thing we see is the public demo organization. Feel free to check that out if you want to see a pre-configured cluster in Mogenius or if you want to see a project in action. But we're going to proceed with our own organization and then connecting our own Kubernetes cluster. So after creating my own organization, we're going to connect our Kubernetes. So this step requires you to have admin access to any type of Kubernetes. Could be a remote one, like a managed cluster on AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, or any other cloud provider, or it could be a local Kubernetes like Minikube on your laptop. We're going to use a remote Kubernetes on a Hetzner server, so we're adding that. And now we can install the Mogenius operator on that cluster. There's two ways to do that, either using the Mogenius CLI or Helm to install the operator. We're going to use Helm, copy the command, and then paste it to a terminal that is connected to our Hetzner Kubernetes. So now the installation is started. Helm is going to install the operator. A pod will be started, and this pod will create an outbound connection from the cluster to the Mogenius platform. Once that is established, we will receive a notification here, and then we have access to all the features from the Mogenius platform. So now the cluster is connected, and we can move on. In this step, we'll need to take care of some baseline components on the cluster. First of all, there's 3 services that need to be installed to power some core features from the Mogenius platform. And then there's some optional services that are proposed as they are often used right after creating a Kubernetes cluster, like ingress controller, in this case an internal container registry, a cert manager, and a cluster issuer. We're going to install all of them. The installation will take a minute, and once that's done, we can move on to the next step. This is also done in the background using Helm charts, and you're free to do that as a later step as well. You can also add your own Helm charts, and you can manage them in the cluster settings right afterwards with Helm upgrades, releases, and all the features that you're used from Helm. All right, the Helm servers are installed, so we'll move on to the next step. And here we will set up the Mogenius build pipeline. Now this allows you to connect a service to a GitHub or GitLab repository and then deploy straight from there to a Kubernetes cluster. And the pipeline will take care of building the image, pushing it to a registry, and creating all of the necessary Kubernetes resources. In this step here, we can provide access to the registry that is used by this pipeline. We can skip this step, however, because we already installed the internal container registry in the previous step. Now, if you want to use your own registry, this is where you would provide the credentials and then move on. Finally, we will provide a default hostname for our cluster. This will be used when you expose a service to the internet. A default hostname will be created as a subdomain of this one. So I have a subdomain that is already pointing to this load balancer IP. Make sure that the domain that you set up has the appropriate DNS records. You can find the details in the documentation as well. And this is it. Our cluster is connected and ready to go. So we can now create a project that allows us to actually deploy a service using the Mogenius pipeline. So let's create a project real quick. We'll select the cluster that we want to use, provide an internal name, and then we can decide if we want to use resource limits. Now this is useful if you have multiple teams or multiple projects on the same cluster. This works like a budget for them to assign resources to their service independently. We're going to use some limits here, and now the project is created. this is the workspace that we can use to deploy and manage our services on the cluster in an easy and abstracted way. So this is where you can invite your team. It has role-based access control. It can manage multiple namespaces under the hood and use the automated build pipeline and deployment pipeline from mogenius. Now, to demonstrate this real quick, we will create a service as a container image from a container image. Just as an example, a simple Nginx service using the public Nginx image on Docker Hub. So in this field, we are providing the link to the container image. By default, you can use the Docker Hub images, but you can also paste in a URL to any type of registry here. Now we can review the settings before we start the deployment. I can see a warning here that asks us to provide some Kubernetes limits for this service. Little bit of resources is enough. We already saved that. And because this is an Nginx, I want to expose it and create an external hostname for this. I will expose the domain. And as you can see, this created a default hostname on this as a subdomain of our cluster domain that we created previously. I'll save that and start the service. And this will now trigger deployment using the mogenius pipeline, and all the necessary resources for this service will be created on the cluster. In the logs, we can see the progress here. So the pod already started. We have logs available immediately. Some metrics here about uptime and potential restarts. And we get status updates for our deployments here. Now, to access the hostname, this is our external hostname here. An SSL certificate was already created using the cert manager, using Let's Encrypt in the background, and our service is ready to go. So this is the quick onboarding from connecting your cluster to creating your first service. This, of course, has a lot more to talk about that we will cover in the upcoming videos. Feel free to check it out on your own. We wish you great fun and success with your own cluster, and thanks for watching.